Oh, welcome into the Russ Joy Show. I'm Russ Joy. Figure that out because you're smart. It's also the name of the show. And I'm debuting something new that I might not actually stick to, but for right now I am. It's a thing I wanted to do for a while and to kind of break up the monotony of the week and to break up that. I mean, listen, there's only so much of listening to me you can do. Okay, and I get it. So I had this idea. What if on Wednesdays, maybe not every Wednesday, but some Wednesdays, we roll out a little special thing, little special thing for the people. We call it Wednesdays with. The Russ Joy Show, Wednesdays with. And in order for there to be a with, there needs to be somebody to do the show with. And I thought, who better, especially given today's topics, to bring on to the show other than Anthony SanFilippo. There he is, ladies and gentlemen. Anthony SanFilippo's here. Hey, Ant, how are you doing?
Russ, I mean, you decide to trot out something new, and I'm the first person you bring on.
Yep.
It's kind of nepotistic, isn't it? I mean, everybody's going to say, of course, you're going to bring Ant on, Russ.
Mm-hmm. They are. I mean, you openly complained one day that you hadn't been on the show in a long time, and I thought, yeah, you know what? I think now is the best time to do it. And the reason that I brought you on today is you're actually at Citi Field, a house of horrors for the Phillies, where they haven't won a game since the Reagan administration. And so it's an important thing that we have a conversation about the Phightin Phils, who are pretty much the fightless Phils, through 2 games of the series. They're going to hopefully try to salvage the game tonight. We'll see if they do or not. I want to get into that. I want to get into the absolute abomination that I thought last night was, especially the heart of the order coming up as small as possible. It's like October came early for these Phillies last night. I want to get your feelings on whether or not there should be concern about Duran, who gave up 4 hits in the 9th inning. Guy who's throwing 102, you'd kind of think, ooh, maybe there shouldn't be that kind of contact coming through. We'll talk about that as well. But somebody I saw over in the comments also called one of the things that is on the thumbnail and in the title. JH says, wasn't ready for the Dale Weise jump scare. Jesus, yes. We're going to talk about Dale Weise, too, who went onto a podcast and flamed Claude Giroux, Jake Voracek, and the Philadelphia Flyers. But, man, where to start, Ant? I think the smartest place for us to start, and I'll drop the we'll put the comments over here in the bottom corner. It'll cut part of Ant's face off, but that's okay. We still love Ant, and it's fine. But the comments they'll flow in the bottom right of the screen, and I'll get to as many as I can to pull up on the screen as we go. Anthony, I said this to the people on Monday before the Phillies-Mets series started. All right, you got a 7-game lead. Worst case scenario, you get swept in New York. You're still up by 4 games with 29 to play. Not that it's an insurmountable lead, not that it's the thing you can feel the safest about, but it's still a significant lead. And now the Mets have already cut that lead by 2 games, and it's not looking great. And I was really disgusted by last night, but I wanted to get your thoughts first. Let's talk about Jesus Luzardo, who can't get through the 5th inning. He's getting pulled with the bases loaded, flips out at the home plate umpire, says, get it together. This isn't the fucking minor leagues, loses his mind. Your initial reaction, first of all, to Jesus Luzardo, where he's at, how do you think he can maybe even factor into the postseason? And also, do you like seeing the fire as he walks off the mound?
Yeah, I do. And real quick, just to kind of give everybody, I'm sitting out in the stands here at Citi Field, Russ. Because
flip the camera around. Show the people what does the field look like.
I'm going to show in a second. I'm going to show everybody in a minute. Because if I was sitting in the press box, I would get yelled at and screamed at for talking to you for a half an hour. But so I come sit out here, and what do we have? That's Nick Castellanos down there doing solo batting practice. Actually, I think that's Rafael Marchand standing there off. It is, as he just turned around. That's Marchand. So I guess it's Castellanos and Marchand. And they're taking private batting practice, early work, as they like to call it, here at Citi Field. So, but as far as Luzardo is concerned, look, I actually thought that the way he handled the first 4 innings were impressive, because let's go through it real fast. The first inning, second batter he faces is Juan Soto, right? You have Juan Soto call that late timeout that the minor league umpire allows to happen. The umpire gives Luzardo an explanation of that he stopped during his windup, which he did not do. Usually Luzardo lets things like that get to him. There was a foul ball that instead of letting Real Muto pick it up, it was just like a little tip at the plate. Soto takes it and throws it off between his legs, and Luzardo was frustrated by that. And then in that at bat, there were 3 strikes that were called balls. And if you look at the the MLB app, you can see it for yourself. All 3 pitches were in the zone. All 3 were called balls. So Luzardo could have very easily lost it there. He did load the bases that inning, but he got out of it without giving up a run. He had a couple more base runners, 2nd, 3rd, 4th inning, but again, no runs. In the 5th inning, I think, he hits a batter. You probably don't want to do that to lead off an inning. And he gives up a single. And then he walked Starling Marte. And when he walked Marte, again, strike 3 was called a ball. And so I think at that point, Rob Thompson's like, we can't let it. It's 0-0 in the 5th inning. Can't let it get away from us. And that's when he goes and replaces him and brings Kerkering in. I kind of think that, you look at that situation and go, okay, I think it's a decent start by Luzardo. It's not the greatest, doesn't get through 5 innings, but considering the situation, and Rob was managing it like it was a playoff game, shorter length for a starter, I think that I don't have a major problem with Luzardo in the game.
I actually I like seeing the fire. I do. I like seeing the fire at that point.
Yeah.
I have no issue with it. You're leaving
He's just got
anyway. What the hell's the
he's just got to
difference in
control
getting
it.
Yeah.
He's got to control it more, Russ, because he can't let it. So he's got a lot of fire. He's got a lot of emotion in his game. He just can't let it impact the game, right? I don't mind him getting thrown out by the umpire after he's coming out of the game already. He wants to curse out the ump, go right ahead, have fun. As long as he doesn't let that emotional stuff get to him while he's pitching.
Yeah. Well, so you have Kevin and I Rock Philly here saying maybe the robo umps will keep Luzardo from losing his temp in the future. Here's one thing about Luzardo, right? I kind of made the joke to a few buddies of mine, but I was like, I've never seen a pitcher go from a Cy Young candidate early in a season to a guy who can't even get through the 5th inning ever. Oh, yes, I have. Aaron Nola. But, realistically, Ant, Jesus Luzardo is, he can't possibly be much of a factor going into the postseason, right? Assuming that this team doesn't fall flat on their face, they make it into the playoffs, they win the NL East, all that. You would assume Sanchez is in there, Suarez is in there. I would have to imagine that they're going to lean on Aaron Nola with the hopes that there's going to be that playoff history. Maybe they also need to break up the lefties, right? They would probably go to Nola. Do you see Luzardo really factoring into a postseason run much at all? Do you think it's more likely they move him to the pen? Where do you think he's at there?
I think he's kind of a tweener, Russ, in the sense that at some point you're going to need a 4th starter in the play. If you're going to go on a World Series run, at some point you're going to need a 4th starter. You may not need him until the NLCS, but you're going to need him at some point. So I definitely think that he's going to be part of the plan in some capacity. And in order to keep him sharp and fresh until that time when he would be needed to start, he's probably going to be a bulk reliever. And what I mean by that is if a starter is in trouble early, and what I mean by trouble, I don't mean giving up 4 or 5 runs. I mean, you might pull a pitcher after 3 innings with allowing 1 run or 2 runs, right? Depending on how the game is going. Yeah. You could conceivably see Luzardo be the next guy who comes in and gives you 2-3 innings before you get to the back end of the bullpen. So I kind of think that's how Luzardo's role is going to be. It's going to be a little bit of both, kind of like Ranger was in 22. If you think about what the role Ranger Suarez had, he did a little bit of everything in 22. He started, he relieved early, pitched multiple innings, he closed games. He did a lot of different things in 22. I kind of think that you're going to see Luzardo in a similar fashion this time around.
So that was the Luzardo piece of it. I want to actually, before we get to the hitters, I want to go to the end of the game. I mentioned at the top, Duran gives up 4 hits, not a great 9th inning. There's no sugarcoating it. I'm going to show him grace, but there are some stats that maybe give you a little bit of pause. There are some stats that maybe make you think not ideal. I actually want to throw to that really quickly because I saw this going around Twitter from Jeff Kerr, who works over at CBS, and The numbers are a little bit shocking, a little bit staggering, Ant. So let me get this one pulled up. Just about Duran over his last.
I can't see them.
I know I'm pulling them up right now. Over his last
I'm not
four
sure who you
appearances, three of which were in save opportunities. Sorry, the last 5 games, Duran has pitched 3 2/3 innings pitched, 8 hits, 2 earned runs, 6 strikeouts, no walks, a 4.91 ERA, 3 of 4 save opportunities. Listen, a guy who has the kind of velocity that Duran does, I don't know if that means that, he's not, you're not supposed to make any contact. I mean, we saw Helsley go up and throw 101. I think Helsley hit 102 on the gun in the 8th inning for the Mets, and then we saw him get rocked, and we saw Bader absolutely crush a bomb to left. But are you concerned at all, I guess, that Duran went from looking like a guy that hitters couldn't really make contact off of, and if they did, it was just staying in the infield, to what we saw last night? Albeit, they weren't all great hits. It's not like they were barreling the ball. But were you concerned at all just after watching Duran last night?
No, and I'm gonna. Here's where I think Jeff cherry picks a little bit with those stats. First of all, he includes the outing where he gets hit on the foot, right? So there's a hit there that gets added to that mix, and then that run eventually comes around the score, right? So that kind of changes that just a little bit. I look at last night and I say, 4 hits. It's only the first time in his career he's ever given up 4 hits without recording an out. Only the 3rd time in his career he's ever given up 4 hits in a game. So okay, it happened one time, and you're right. A couple of the hits were not great. Like the little blooper to left field makes me wonder if Brandon Marsh doesn't go all out to try and catch that ball if he can make that catch. And then, of course, the 4th hit is with the infield in. That's a typical ground ball to shortstop, right? I mean, but you have to play in because you have nobody out and the base is loaded. So it's not like he went up there and got rocked. I guess the thing of it is that a couple of the pitches were a little up. And I don't care how hard you throw, major league hitters have the ability. They could time. I say this all the time. They could time the nose of a jet plane if given the opportunity to practice it enough, right? So You're seeing a ball coming in at 102 miles an hour. You're going to put a bat on it a lot of times. It's not like you're going to just blow guys away. It's the matter of where you're putting it in the zone. You can get away with some mistakes when you throw hard like Duran does. It's part of the problem why Aaron Nola gives up home runs, because he doesn't throw hard. So if he makes a mistake, the ball goes far. Usually with Duran, if you make a mistake, it's a single. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. So, and that's pretty much what these have been. What happened with the Nationals in the game against the Nationals, he had 3 balls that were hit opposite field down the line. Okay, those batters were swinging so late, and they hit him down the line opposite field. And you sit there and go, well, maybe, and I think Lenny Dykstra tweeted this out, maybe you should guard the lines when you have a pitcher throwing 102 and the guys are coming up and they're trying to hit the ball. But they went back and looked at it. In his career, Jhoan Duran has had 4 balls hit opposite field down the line off of him. 3 of them were against the Washington Nationals. So is that luck? What is that? So do I worry? No. Do I think that he doesn't have enough swing and miss? Yeah, you can make that argument. But usually he's getting weak contact, and I'm just as good with weak contact as I am with striking somebody out.
I'm trying not to get too, I guess, in my own head about Duran. I'm not starting to panic by any stretch. It's a little bit concerning. I think the thing that it was an important bit of context, and you called it out, but Kerr had in that tweet, was that those were the 5 games, including the one that he got hit on that comebacker where people, initially feared the worst. They had a broken bone on his foot and his season was over, right? I don't want to get too crazy here. Obviously, he changed leagues. We saw how rough the stats are for Helsley, simply changing teams, not even changing leagues, going from the Cardinals to the Mets. I don't know. I guess we'll see where it lands. I think Duran's going to be fine. I think it was just so many people last night. I don't know, and if it was just people were looking for a reason to be upset last night, and they didn't want to point their ire at the lineup, which is where I'm the angriest, which is what we're going to get to next. But like, I'm fine with looking at Duran's body of work and saying, no, this guy's still like a bona fide stud. Of all the things that you could be upset about and worried about with this Phillies team right now, and going into September and hopefully a nice October run, Duran should be like the least of your worries. I think we can agree there and like, feel pretty good about it.
Yeah, and here's the other thing, Russ. And first of all, everything's heightened for fans because it's the Mets, right?
Yeah.
The Phillies could have come into this series with an 11-game lead over the Mets, and fans would be melting down just as much as they have been the last two nights, right? So it wouldn't matter. Like, it doesn't matter. It's because it's the Mets. But secondly, and this is the thing I'm going to say, tell me the last closer or any pitcher who got through a season with a 0.00 ERA. And it's almost like fans expect that, like, this guy to come out and be perfect. Like, pitchers are going to get hit, like, every once in a while. Now, if this becomes a consistent thing going forward, like it has been for Helsley has been bad in almost every outing for the Mets since the trade deadline.
His ERA going into last night with the Mets was like 8.36, 8.16 or something. I mean, it's been god awful.
Yeah, something crazy. Yeah, he's been terrible. And so, like, if it's that, then I think, sure, there's reason to panic. But for Jhoan Duran to give up 2 earned runs in 10 appearances, like, are we going to freak out about that? Like, is that something that's really good, right? Like, it's really good. You just got to put it into perspective.
Let's not panic about that. Let's talk about the actual problem, the legitimate issue, the thing that every single Phillies fan has been worried about from last offseason through the offseason where Dave Dombrowski didn't address it, through spring training, the first half of the season, the trade deadline where he didn't really address it. This fucking lineup, Anthony, made up of guys that get paid very, very well to do a job, to put balls in play, preferably get some extra base hits, maybe crush a homer or two every once in a while. Guys like Kyle Schwarber who have had MVP caliber seasons. He's hitless in his last 16. Is it 16 at bats? Like, it's bad for Kyle Schwarber. Yep. Harper had the embarrassing rivalry. What the hell did he call it? The rival set of things. I saw Spike Eskin lost it about it. Bill Colarulo then tweeted about it. Was like, oh, it's not that big of a deal. I thought it was dumb, but okay. So Harper has a bad first game, has a better second game, although late in this one with an opportunity to get this team back into things, maybe even win the game or take a lead or get things heading that direction. He doesn't put together a very good at bat. You have the Castellanos of the world who have essentially been reduced to being a platoon guy. Also not great. Trey Turner doesn't put together a competitive at bat. And you look at all these guys, and then you look at the Alec Boehms of the world, who you go like, yo, shouldn't you be better than this at this point? You look at those guys. They don't perform late in this game when the heart of your order coming up is really, fundamentally, right, supposed to be the time that this team takes that lead and maybe starts to exercise this Citi Field demon, this giant monkey they've got sitting on their back. And all of us, it's like Harrison Bader's the guy who delivers the big clutch hit, the 2-run home run to tie the game. And the big money guys came up incredibly small. And people are concerned, Ant, because obviously this happened last season when this Phillies team was unable to put the Mets out of their misery during the regular season, which we talked about a lot on this show. They could not get the job done against the Mets last postseason. And while we like to say LOL Mets as we watch off in the distance, last night wasn't great. The end of the game specifically with the big money guys, not great. Don't tell me you're going to Phillies apologist this one to me. Where did you land on those late game at bats or lack thereof?
Well, see, again, I think it comes down to you're not wrong about what you talk about in the moment, right? But to kind of say that they're not hitting is a little bit of a fallacy, right? I mean, it really is.
At the end of the game.
Yeah, so you're talking about one at bat for each guy.
Clutch time, important part of the game.
And I have no problem with, but it's a 5-5 game at that point. It's not like they had not scored or have only had one run or trouble scratching stuff out. They'd scored 5 runs. So I agree with you. Like, I thought Trey Turner's at bat with the go-ahead run at third base in the 8th inning, and he strikes out, I thought was terrible. I thought he was way out in front. I thought he's got to have a better approach. He's a little over anxious in that at bat. Yep. And then in the top of the 9th, Schwarber leads off, and he strikes out, but he just missed hitting a monstrous home run in that at bat.
He did.
He hit it to the last row of the second deck, and it was foul.
Yeah.
So like you look at that and go, I know, but is that an awful at bat? I think Harper striking out. I think that was, but he had 3 hits before that in the game. He had 3 hits.
Pitch recognition on that last at bat was kind of shoddy too. Is that him trying to do too much in that situation? Like I don't know.
Yeah,
that doesn't look like a guy who's just trying to get
probably.
on. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, you're probably right. He's probably looking at it like, all right, Kyle just made it out. I need to hit a solo home run to put us back ahead, rather than let me just get on base and let the next guy come up behind us. And I think that's
which, in fairness, is kind of how the Mets approach the bottom of the 9th, right? Like, to me, like watching the Mets at bats in the bottom of the 9th. I mean, granted, it's a home game. They have the benefit of getting the bat last. It's a little bit different pressure wise. They also won the first game, all that. And again, the Phillies haven't won at Citi Field since before Abe Lincoln was shot. So you take all that into consideration. Like, the Mets hitters look like they were just trying to get on base more so than like try to play hero ball. I don't know. Is that like ultimately? Do you look at it and say that's kind of what doomed the Phillies last night?
I think that's the most fair criticism of this lineup, is that they sometimes get to a point where they feel like they have to be the hero. They have to be the guy who has the big monstrous blow that opens things up, rather than just passing the bat. And I think that is a very, very fair criticism of this team, all the way through the lineup. I think it happens far too often. But I do not necessarily think that that they always come up small, just because they did in 2 games against Arizona and in 2 games against the Mets last year. It's too small of a sample size to say they always come up small, because when you look at their numbers, all told, compared to the rest of baseball, they are top 10 in the league in every statistical category. It tells you that 2/3 of this is just what baseball's become. And I was having this discussion with Bob the other day. Like, you're watching the Phillies and the Mets play. It's actually last night. Through the first 4 or 5 innings, like, nobody's scoring, nobody's getting on base, and nobody's doing anything. And he's like, do these 2 teams are they just not good? And I said, the funny thing is that they are good, but this is what's considered good in baseball today.
Yeah.
10 years ago, 15 years ago, even longer than that, this would not be considered good.
It's brutal. It's
brutal.
Right? Yeah. I mean, I worry. Ant. I feel like at this point, you say it's a small sample size. I look at it in terms of critical moments. Like,
well, sure, it's critical.
You can have guys that put up stats in relatively meaningless moments. Here, let's do the cross-sport comparison. What was one of the things that dogged Claude Giroux as a member of the Flyers? A lot of people would say Claude Giroux could score points against bottom-feeding teams. He could score them in the first period of games. When the game was ultimately on the line, did he deliver? I don't know. You can make that point. A more recent example would be Morgan Frost. We all love Morgan Frost. Great guy. Enjoy your time out in Calgary, fella. But, like, you can hit home runs. You can drive in runs. You can get on base. You can get a few hits early in the game like Harper did. So we're not going to, shit on Bryce Harper here, because, the second game of the series, it wasn't a bad performance out of him. But, when it's nut crunching time and, when it really is put up or shut up time, somebody from that highly paid core has to deliver in some way. And it's not even a matter of all right, cool, Schwarber goes up there, almost hits a home run. Harper goes up there and looks like he's swinging for the fences, which is only going to pull you within 1. It doesn't even get you a tie game. It doesn't even get you it gets you a 1-run lead. You feel good or whatever. My issue, Ant, is that this team is too well paid and too top heavy to not be able to put together enough competitive at-bats that in the 9th inning of a game, after you watch this, trade deadline acquisition of Bader, who no one really knew what to expect out of, he delivers that kind of moment where you say, yes, that is the moment that things shifted for this team. That was the thing that started to get them, to get their heads squared on, and then the Phillies asserted their dominance. They go out, they pick up another run or two in the top of the 9th, they give it off to Duran. Duran has a shutdown 9th inning, and then you feel like, all right, momentum has shifted again. Now we're good. Now you're going into the series finale. Whatever happens, you've at least broken that curse at Citi Field, and you're feeling a little bit better. These guys just seem to come up small in these big moments. That's a concern, and it's been a concern in the postseason. And maybe it doesn't matter right now. It's the second game of a series in August. But man, I don't know. So much of it to me is a tone-setting thing, and so much of it is you need to prove you can win at this park because they have been unable to do so for years. It is a legitimate issue.
Well, I think it's in their heads a little bit, for sure. But I don't know if it ultimately matters. Are you playing here in October? I mean, what are the odds of playing here in October?
Probably not high, but I don't know if that really matters. You know, if they get swept, Ant, like let's just say hypothetically, they get swept. They go out and they lose tonight.
Yep.
This Mets team rides emotions, right? This Mets team, when they get hot, they get hot. The Phillies have had issues for, a month and a half where they haven't been able to close out a sweep, where it's been like, all right, you get 2 out of 3, but you drop the series finale. They don't always have that same...
They swept the Mariners last week.
They swept the Mariners last week. That was one. But they don't have this, like, constant killer close it out. You win the first 2, you drop the third. I'm worried. I'm a little bit worried about the Phillies, Ant. I'm a little bit worried. You don't seem worried.
No, it's not that. It's the reason. It's not that I'm. You shouldn't be worried because this is what baseball is what I'm trying to say. Like every team goes through the same thing. It's pot. Like you get in, and then it's going to be wild. I'm telling you, I'm not predicting the Phillies go to the World Series by any stretch of the imagination. I don't think that they are, but that's not because I think that they can't. I think that it's just that baseball is so even this year. Like every team is about the same. That it makes the odds of them being the team that gets there that much harder because everybody's going to be about the same. It's not like in years past where you would play a team you played the Marlins in the first round. Like, okay, you're going to beat the Marlins, right? Like that's not a worry. Like you're not having that this year, right? You're having that this year. You're not having that this year. And I think in both leagues, like if you ask me today who I think the 2 World Series teams are, I guarantee you it'll be my prediction will change by the time the playoffs roll around because the teams are they're interchangeable right now. And so I look at it and say, you could be worried about the Phillies, but the Phillies have just as good a chance as anybody else because they're all the same, all these teams.
Yeah. They might not have been all the same if Wheeler were healthy. Unfortunately, that's like the ultimate wrench that gets kind of thrown into the machine here. And we'll see if they're able to kind of weather that storm. I have to think that it's going to galvanize those guys. And prior to this series, it felt like it was starting to galvanize the team. You hope that obviously, win it for wheels or something becomes the motto in the locker room.
Yeah, and look, even in this series, Russ, I thought that they got after Senga really well in the first game. They lost 13-3, but it wasn't a 13-3 game, right? It was a much closer game until Jordan Romano and Joe Ross lit it on fire. They got after him. They got him out of the game early. They didn't have as much success against Mcintyre yesterday, but they got after the bullpen yesterday. So I think that the galvanization of what they need to do is still occurring, even though they've lost a couple of games. Yeah. And here's the last thing I'll say about it, because I know you want to get to the hockey thing because I got to run.
Yes.
Let's say they win tonight, right? They win the game tonight, right? Everybody's like, hey, just needed to get one up in Citi Field. Would it have made a difference if they won it last night and then lost today? Like, what would be the difference? Like, see what I'm saying? Like, I think that there's always an in-the-moment overreaction with baseball that you cannot have. You got to take it. You got to take things more collectively with baseball. It's just because it plays every day, unlike football, hockey, basketball, where there's usually time off between games. You can't do that in baseball. You just really can't.
Yeah. All right. Let me get over to the other thing before you have to head out, and that is Dale Weise, friend of the Snow the Goalie program. We love Dale Weise over on Snow the Goalie. And there was, it was like January 9th or something of 2019, January 14th of 2019, something like that. We're like about a month into the Chuck Fletcher tenure after Hextall got shit canned at the end of the calendar year 2018. Dale Weise comes on with us. We're down at Skate Zone. We interview Dale Weise. I would encourage people to go find that episode. We tweeted it out from the Snow the Goalie account yesterday. I think it was called "In the Last Week I've Heard a Lot Worse." I think that was the name of the episode. But Dale Weise goes over on a podcast, and he absolutely ripped, shredded, destroyed, decimated, took down the Philadelphia Flyers, his time as a Flyer. And most notably, he kind of called out Claude Giroux, Jake Voracek, and the leaders in the locker room from his brief tenure as a member of the Philadelphia Flyers. We're going to try to kind of jostle back and forth between the clip itself and your thoughts and my thoughts and all that. But he was a guest over on Slang and the Biscuit, which I did not know was a thing, but apparently it is a thing, and now I know that it is a thing going forward. And I will give these guys credit. It was a good interview with Dale Weise, and they learned, if they hadn't known already, the same way that we learned a few years ago, there are a lot of very guarded guys in hockey. Dale Weise is not one of them. He will let you know how he feels. And let's go over to him now.
Really, really good teams that had amazing culture. I came into the league in Vancouver a year after they went to the Stanley Cup final. We won the President's Trophy my first year. That core group of players, like Manny Malhotra, Luongo, Sammy Salo, Kessler, Bieksa, Burroughs, like Alex Edler was a younger guy, but he was pretty big in the league. I was so fortunate and
so there you have the early career. There you have the early idea of what a really good locker room was, and obviously Weise does not feel that same way about this Flyers crew. Let's keep going.
Almost couldn't understand how good that culture was for making everybody feel a part of the team. I joke around with some guys last weekend. Vancouver, we'd get on the road, we'd go play a game. Maybe we fly somewhere, we get in there at 12 o'clock.
I'm going to let that keep playing for a second. So, Ant, the idea of guys all going out together, going out for team dinners and everything, pretty important in hockey, pretty big in sports in general, correct?
Correct, yes.
I would get on
more
other
so in
teams
hockey,
where it's like
here we go. This is
everybody's like whispering to their one buddy, like, where are we going for dinner? And it was just so cliquey. Philly, to me, it was, I went from Chicago in 2015. Again, another incredible culture. You see why they won just by the people that they had there.
Very big juxtaposition here. Then jumping back to Chicago and about Chicago's culture as they won cups. And then he mentioned that some locker rooms, we'll take this down for a second, we'll bring it back up. This idea that while some teams, great leadership, winning teams, everybody's together. The leaders are the ones who are getting the team to go out for those team dinners. They're the ones that are getting the team to come together, to spend time together. You're looking forward to going out with your teammates. The big juxtaposition here is that, well, apparently not with the Flyers. He mentions that there were cliques. There were guys kind of whispering to one another, where are we going for dinner? Not where are the collective, the general we going for dinner. All right, we're going to throw it back to Weise here.
I went to Philly, and I was, talking to my dad, talking to my brother. Within weeks, I was like, man, no wonder this team hasn't won. You could just feel the difference. You could feel the culture. Two guys leading the charge there were, Claude Giroux, Jake Voracek, who were tremendous players, top 10 scorers, great talent, but not guys that were, in my opinion, really bringing a team together, really wanting to win.
So and if we're being real, that's pretty damning. One, Captain Giroux, assistant captain Voracek, but saying great players, however, not guys who really wanted to win. I mean, that's about as damning of a statement as you can have, right? That's something.
Yeah, I kind of say, listen, I would. Someone else asked me about it after he said it, and I said, yeah, I mean, were Giroux and Voracek the best leaders of men? No, they weren't. And that's, in hockey, for whatever reason, that kind of matters. The captain, the alternate captain, whatever. In other sports, I think there are guys who just are considered leadership guys. They don't wear a C. They don't have to do any of that nonsense. But hockey, that's their tradition. And so there are players like Dale Weise who wants to go to a place and have other people be that for him, right? I mean, let's be honest. If you didn't think that there was a good leadership structure, wouldn't you want to be the person who kind of try to grab some of those reins and offered some leadership skills to the thing? I would. That's how I look at it. If I walk into somewhere and and I don't like how it's being led, I'm going to try and get involved. I'm going to try and make it different, make it better, right? Like that's what I do. I'd rather do that than sit around and whisper and complain and bitch about it. So I do think there's an element of sour grapes because things didn't go well here. But here's where I will agree with Dale Weise.
All right.
The culture
an
then.
Agreement. Okay.
Yeah, the culture at that time, and keep in mind what was going on at that time. You had Alain Vigneault, who was kind of sort of, not always the smoothest guy with kind of keeping a relationship with his players. As the coach, you had a situation where you just changed your GM, so there's a lot of uncertainty. And then we already know what the executive management was like at the time for the franchise, and it was an abject disaster. So, yeah, the culture was probably really bad. And it would have taken a really good leader type to change that. Like, even if Claude Giroux and Jake Voracek were decent leaders of men, not great, but decent, I don't think that would have changed the culture because of just everything else that was happening at the same time. So I do think that he's right that it was bad, but I think that there were external reasons for why it was bad, and it was only exacerbated by the fact that neither of those guys were really guys who were going to be the great unifiers of a team and go beat the world, considering what was going on.
I want to go back to this real quick. This is almost done, and then a couple of other thoughts because I agree with you on some of it, and some of it's we'll see.
Sound like they're missing like a real leader.
Yeah, they were great players, those two, and tremendous to watch. But kind of the guys that you're in a 6-1 game, you're winning 6-1. He's got 4 points. Coach shows the fourth line out on the power play with 2 minutes left, and he's looking at the coach like, "Come on," like just one of those guys. Like you just.
So that kind of goes to that idea, and I was mentioning this earlier about the stat padding, the scoring points against teams early in games or against bottom feeding teams, or maybe when you have a big lead. That is something that did kind of dog, especially Giroux, maybe not as much with Voracek, but definitely with Giroux, where people would say all right, you're up big or you're down big and you're getting a goal late at the end of a game. And it's all right, so it looks like you produced, but did you produce at a point that mattered the most? Here you have Weise saying, now he didn't say which guy it was, maybe it applied to both, maybe it was one more than the other, but the idea of late in the game, coach rolls out the fourth line, and one of the stars on your team, one of the guys who has a letter on his sweater, kind of looking at the coach that should be me. That should be my opportunity. That probably wouldn't set the best tone, you would think, right?
Yeah, I mean, I can, but again, keep in mind that Dale Weise is the fourth liner, and Claude Giroux is the first liner. And I mean, yeah, I also think it's probably slightly hyperbolic when he says it's a 6-1 game. Because think about how many times fans would complain that a coach, that doesn't have to just be Alain Vigneault, it could be any coach, would roll the fourth line out when the team is trailing. Why is that fourth line out there? The team's down. We need to score a goal. Why are you putting the fourth line out? And we would always sit there and say, well, you can't play the same guys 25 minutes a night. You're going to wear them out. They're not going to be as productive, blah, 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 blah. Well, now you got the fourth liner saying that the top line guy wants to be out there, and we're supposed to say, well, how awful is that? You should let the fourth liners go out there. You can't have it both ways, right? So the way I look at it, I sit there and go, did it happen? It probably happened more often than we realize, where Giroux is kind of like, we want to win this game, get me out, cut it down, go to 3 lines. We don't need that fourth line going out there. And I'm not surprised by that because he's a very competitive player, right?
Yeah, but the hypothetical Weise was setting up here was that they're up big. Like that when they're up big, he's complaining that he's not out there with a chance to get another point on the power play, not we're trying to come back. His idea was we're up 6-1, you have 4 points in the game, and then you're still trying to get more. Yeah, so I'm
okay.
Because the way that you're explaining it is totally fine, because I'd agree with you. As a leader, sure, you do want to have the opportunity to dig your team, to, get out of that hole and get your team back in. Weise's point was, no, we're up big. This dude already has a lot of points in the game, already has 4 points. And instead of cheering on the fourth line, go out there, guys, get your point, go have your opportunity. Then he's oh, why am I not out there with a chance to get the 5th point? And that's why I tend to believe Weise in that situation. All right, I'm going to go back out real quick, and then you and I can wrap it.
Could be. Yeah.
Create such a
Now,
toxic environment when you do stuff like that. Like that would never have been the case on Chicago or Vancouver. And we had good teams in Montreal. Like everybody wanted everybody to win, and it's you could feel the difference right away.
You feel almost like you have like a team where teams within the teams. Everybody's pulling on like 4 separate ropes versus just one. You mean?
Yeah. Like,
and if you remember back in that season, and there have been other seasons since, there have been seasons where we had heard fractured locker room. And I think it was actually one of the Dale Weise years. I wrote something about the fact that there was this idea that there were fractures in that locker room and that the veteran players kind of lived in their own ecosystem and the young guys lived in their own ecosystem. And I was pretty vocal about it. I've been vocal about it in the years since that, like, there was a lack of definitive leadership on at least a few of those teams where, like, Flyers are getting their asses, kicked. They're in the midst of they've lost 8 of their last 11 or whatever. The media does their requests of which players they're going to talk to. Some of the vets get erased off the board. Who gets sent out? Young Phil Myers, a young Travis Sanheim. Sean Couturier was kind of like the in-between at that point. Still a little bit on the younger side, but had been in the league for a number of years, was a veteran. But you had a lot of these younger guys that had to go out and answer the bell because the vets were just wiped off the board. You never knew why. The captain would go off and take his shower and kind of wait out the media. We'd go down to cover the coach. And then every once in a while you get, all right, now he's ready if you guys want to go back to the locker room. Well, no, now we're ready to go back upstairs and start writing the stories. To me, it was a group that was kind of devoid of a leader who goes out there and takes the heat in the bad moments and takes the glory in the good moments. I don't know. That was how I always felt about the team. Weise, kind of aired some of it out here. Is it fair? Is it not? Should people give it credence because, is he just a bitter player? He was a bottom 6 guy. He was a 4th-line player. I would say that, just because you were a 4th-line player, it doesn't make your experience with that team any less valid, right? But, maybe you take it with a grain of salt. I don't know where you land on it.
Yeah, I mean, again, I do think that there are, when stories get told years later after the fact, they are kind of big fish stories in a lot of ways. At least there's definitely truth in it, I'm sure, somewhere. But is it always going to be 100% accurate? No, it's probably embellished slightly. Whatever. Those things, I look at it and I sit there and go, who the hell's Dale Weise to say this, in all honesty? And let's be real, right? Marginal player, bounced around the league, never really stuck anywhere, had a bad experience here and decides he's going to fry the team when you got a guy who's probably going to be in the Hall of Fame that he's ripping, who's still playing at 38 years old or whatever Giroux is now. I don't know. It's kind of hard to take it. If you had a bunch of guys come out and say it, then I'm more on board with it. But I just look at it and go, yeah, this is what it's like on a lot of teams. Just guys don't talk about it all the time, and he's trying to throw it out there. He shouldn't be.
Except the dirty secret that you and I both know is there are guys who have said the same stuff. They just won't go on the record with it. So that's kind of where it gets a little bit hairy. Weise at least,
yeah, but again, Russ,
I will give the guy, the credit in that he put himself out. He went on camera. He's taking accountability for what he said. I don't know.
You know what? But what's he got to lose? What does he have to
have
lose?
anything
He's
to lose.
not
But for some of those
anymore.
guys, some of the guys who acknowledge the fact
NHL.
that the locker room wasn't that great, those guys aren't going in the Hall of Fame either. Most of them, many of them.
Yeah.
But
what I'm trying to me, it's very, very unfair to put it all on 1 or 2 players when everything that was going wrong in that organization at that time, from top to bottom, to sit there and blame the culture on 2 players who were the best players on the team, mind you, while the rest of Rome is burning around them. I can't get on board with that. I just can't.
Okay.
I'm not trying to absolve Giroux or Voracek at all here. I'm certain that there's, like I said, I'm certain there's an element of truth to it. But the reason things were as bad and the reason Dale Weiss had as bad an experience as he had in Philadelphia was not particularly directly related to Claude Giroux and Jake Voracek.
Here's the last little bit, because he does talk about the organization as a whole.
That was Philly when I got there too, and it was a disaster from day one, and you could see they're still in the turmoil. This is, almost 10 years later now, where it's just they haven't figured it out, and I don't know what the answer is for them, but you just gotta. I mean, it starts at the top, right? Like, and I'm not talking management or that. Like, I'm talking on your team. Like, your captain, your head guys that are pulling the charge. They set the tone, and that they kind of steer your team. It makes such a big difference.
So that part is interesting to me, and I'll keep this conversation going. I know that you got to go do the series finale of Phillies Mets. So let the people know about the baseball show that you host here on the Joy Media Network that we tout a lot on this show. Appreciate the fact you're here, but let the people know where they can find your baseball related content.
Well, my written stuff's at On Pattison, but we also have Phightin Words that me and Bob Wankel host twice a week, usually Mondays and Fridays, here on the Joy Media Network. And you can find that on YouTube at youtube.com/@Phightin Words. And we're also in everywhere you get all your podcasts. So
I've also made it easy for the people in the description of the episode on YouTube and Facebook. I always link to Phightin Words right at the bottom, so you don't even have to leave.
That's
the
nice
stream.
of you.
That's I'm a nice guy. I'm a nice guy.
I wonder how many. You know what you should do? Go check out the analytics and see how many click-throughs we get there.
You know what? I think I might. Maybe I will, Ant. All right. Anyway, Ant, have fun out there. I will be in touch. Anthony SanFilippo, live from Citi Field, where the Phillies will hopefully not vomit all over themselves tonight and get swept by the Mets. All right. So I want to give a little additional context here as we kind of wrap up the Dale Weiss of it all. There is a very interesting dynamic that happens in locker rooms and sports as a whole, and in my experience of covering teams in the locker room setting. Now, admittedly, I have not spent much of any time since the COVID season being down around the Flyers locker room. Prior to that, I spent a few years going to every home game, doing press row show, doing side interviews, doing side pieces over on Crossing Broad, where I would kind of like do the player profile stuff, or a secondary sideline from a game when Ant would do his full write-up. So like I have a few years of that kind of experience, not really going to practice much. I was not a beat guy, but I was somebody who would go down and would still be around team, and you get players that would kind of talk to you off to the side. You get stuff on background, you'd get stuff that you couldn't report on. But I can't just take the Dale Weiss comments and kind of cast them aside because he was a bottom 6'4", because he was a fourth line guy. I said it pretty plainly there to Ant. There are definitely people who have the same viewpoint of Dale Weiss, that Claude Giroux and Jake Voracek were not good leaders for that team for a few years, that the locker room was divided, that the locker room had fractures in it, that they were not winning players. Dale Weiss isn't the only guy who felt that way, but he is largely the only person who has gone on the record and talked about it. Now, will that change over time? Maybe. But to Ant's point, Dale Weiss has nothing to lose. Some of those guys, a good number of them are still active in the league. A few still play for the team. Some do not. Here's the other issue. I think in a lot of times when you talk about leadership and how leadership and the values that leadership team instills in the rest of the team, how it permeates the team, you see that as the roster kind of turns over year, right? Like Chris Pronger as a leader, had he been able to remain with the Flyers for a longer time, had it not been for that horrible injury that ended his career far too soon, would a Chris Pronger-led team for 3-5 years, would that have probably changed the leadership structure and the likelihood of the Flyers being a consistent playoff team for the next decade? There's a good chance, right? But we didn't get to see that play out. What are some of the things that we do know about that Giroux and Voracek-led locker room? Well, we know that there were players that felt like there were divisions. We know that Weise had actually come on Snow the Goalie, and he talked about the fact that there were some guys on the team who would immediately at the end of a game go on social media, that you're riding the bus and you see guys going on social media searching their names. Most people thought that he was talking about Nolan Patrick, but we also know that at that time, Jake Voracek was name searching himself, not even for tags, right? I'd almost guarantee you that people who are going to watch this, either live or after the fact, a bunch of you have probably been blocked by Jake Voracek, and it's not because you tagged him in a tweet. It's because he name searched himself, saw that you were critical or said something negative, and he blocked you. That's what happened. Like that kind of shit was going on. I think that that's pretty weak, right? If you're a professional athlete and you're going to be on social media, you have every right to do that. The idea of like searching your own name and blocking people from it is kind of weak. Whatever. The locker room, once Voracek was gone, and eventually once Giroux was gone, that got handed off, right? What was the first thing that John Tortorella said when he got brought into Philadelphia? He said, we got to clean up this locker room. We got to clean up the dressing room. The culture had to be overhauled. Well, where did the culture come from? I mean, like, do we blame Sean Couturier and Scott Lawton for the culture? Or, like, was there a great culture and then Couturier and Lawton were horrible human beings? No, probably not. But they were likely following in the lead, right, of the guys who led before them. And this was their only team that they had played on. So maybe you continue some of the same practices. Maybe you continue the same sort of leadership. I'm not saying that those guys were as cliquey. And in fairness, like, I haven't heard much in the last year or two about this team being super, super cliquey. It feels like that died off a few years ago. And you talked to those guys last year, and it felt like it was a more galvanized team. We certainly know that at the end of the Tortorella tenure, the locker room was pretty galvanized against the head coach. And it feels like going into this season, there's been enough turnover over the last couple of years and enough positivity, at least in terms of, like, you have a potential superstar in Matvei Mishkov. You have a coach that's being brought in here who has good relationships with players at prior stops that may or may not become free agents at some point in the not too distant future, Quinn Hughes, that you might want to try to bring into town. All of a sudden, it feels like things have kind of changed. Now, Weise kind of gave the out that the leadership thing doesn't fall on the front office. It falls right on the guy who's wearing the C and the leadership team at the team level. I will say that, like, if we're going to try to give some grace, Hextall as an executive, not successful with the Flyers. Really wasn't successful with the Penguins either. Chuck Fletcher, retread higher, Nepo baby, all that kind of stuff. Not exactly the best culture to walk into. Keith Jones, Danny Briere seem to have been taking some steps, some strides into trying to revamp the culture here. Dan Hilferty over Dave Scott, massive upgrade, right? The vibes of the Flyers might be back or coming closer to coming back. All of this is to say, I think that Dale Weise, could he have embellished some? Maybe. Was he bitter that he didn't get a look as a top 6 player? Possibly, probably. I mean, he also says later in that interview that he believes that a lot of guys who are on the fourth line or on the bottom 6 of a bunch of teams, if they were given the opportunity to play in the top 6 on other teams, they would ultimately be players that could rack up points. It's just that you get pigeonholed into being a fourth liner, into being a checking player, and you're not given the opportunity to go out and rack up your points or to show that you are more than a checking player. Now, how you feel about it is up to you. I simply am trying to give you a little bit of a vantage point of somebody who is around that team. People can always hold this, out there. I was a very big fan of Claude Giroux, the player. I did not like what I saw from Claude Giroux, the leader. There were plenty of times that he just actively avoided the media. And as the captain of the team, when you avoid the media, I don't think it sets a great example. You might not think it matters, but like when a young guy has to get sent out in your place, when a Phil Myers has to get dragged out as a young guy, when a young Travis Sanheim has to come out and answer questions, even an Ivan Provorov has to come out at that point in his career and answer questions when they weren't the original requested guys. Like, I don't think it sets a great example, but that's just me. Ant thinks that Claude Giroux is going in the Hall of Fame. Maybe he will, maybe he won't. We have already had the conversation on this show before about, some choices. Forcing the way to Florida, then ultimately choosing to go back to Ottawa instead of to one of a number of teams that would have had interest that actually could have gone on to win Stanley Cups. The idea of being a winning player, how much does that matter? How much does it matter to be home? I'm not going to fault a guy. Like on a human level, I won't fault a guy if you decide, you know what, I have 5 years left to play. I want to go play at home. You have a young family. Your family is from that area. You want to go back, have the help, have your family involved in raising your kids, all that kind of stuff. That's all great. On a human level, can't fault you. From the perspective of somebody who wants to win a Stanley Cup, you don't go play in Ottawa. You don't force your way to Florida and then go to Ottawa. Ottawa had no fucking chance then. They have no fucking chance now. That to me has always been kind of silly. Teams like Colorado were interested. Teams like Florida didn't have the cap space at the time, but they were interested. There were some other teams within the Flyers' own division that were interested in Claude Giroux. All of them had a legitimate or quasi-legitimate chance of winning a Stanley Cup, and he didn't go there. And that's fine. But, Dale Weise saying not only no, these guys weren't the best captain and alternate captain, they weren't the best leaders, said they're not guys who are concerned with winning. That to me is pretty damning. And again, you can feel how you want. I don't know if it had been if a Chris Pronger comes out a year from now and says something like that, does it get more weight? Maybe. People would probably also say, well, Claude Giroux was a much younger player when Chris Pronger played on the team. I don't know. We'll see. I think ultimately, with a lot of these guys and a lot of those teams that were underperforming teams and not very good teams, history may get rewritten at some point, or maybe we will get more context on what happened behind closed doors and why some of those teams underperformed the way they did. That is not to say that every team that Claude Giroux played on was a great team. Many of them were not. Many of them were not a top-to-bottom playoff team, let alone Stanley Cup contender. So we're just trying to be fair here. Okay. Peter Tom Willis saying great info. Stuff I was hoping for when I started watching Philly Pods. Thank you, Peter Tom Willis. Wonderful. Okay. C-Mac says, Jake has been quiet on X. Maybe he blocked you. C-Mac, maybe he blocked you. Okay. And there you go. JH says, pretty sure that Voracek issued a block there as well. Jim Grasso says, maybe Weise was a dick and no one liked him. It's entirely possible. Could be. I think that one of the things that came out around the time that Weise was on the team is that he might not have been so quiet about the fact that he thought he was better than a bottom 6 player. And we'll see, will there be any rebuttal? Will there be former Flyers who are going to come out and attack Dale Weise for his thoughts? I don't know. Now, here's what I want to get to. This is the last thing of the day. And I do want to thank Anthony for hopping on because, as I mentioned before, he's up there covering the Phillies series finale against the Mets. So we talked about the Phillies. We talked about the Dale Weise thing. And I want to get to 2 clips really quick. And they're both about the Eagles. One is about Jalen Hurts, and it's a positive one. But I actually want to go to the one that made me, it made me question a lot of things, okay? So I kind of floated this thing to Ant earlier. Yesterday, we saw the discourse around Bryce Harper and wearing the rival pack or the rivalry pack, right? He wore Mets colors. He said it was his rivalry pack. And Spike Eskin on WIP's afternoon show said he was embarrassed as somebody who roots for the Phillies and roots for Bryce Harper that Harper chose to do that. And Bill Colarulo, I saw the tweet go out where he was like, well, it's not really an embarrassing thing, or he's not livid. He doesn't think it's a huge deal, but he doesn't think it's great. Whatever. So the afternoon shows kind of doing their thing. My read on it was not ideal. Then you have some national people who say some really dumb shit, right? And this had nothing to do with the Phillies. This has to do with the Eagles. Mike Tannenbaum, who many people know for his tenure as a front office executive in the NFL, who's not gotten back into the NFL as a front office executive, he's on ESPN. And he has some of the worst takes in all of national media, especially around the NFL, which is weird, right? If you've been a front office executive, if you've been a player at the NFL level, there's usually a certain level of insight that you can bring to the table. Mike Tannenbaum had some of the dumbest shit to say on First Take yesterday. And it was so bad that I feel the need. We need to actually listen to it because I pretty much guarantee many of you out there have not heard this because maybe you saw Mike Tannenbaum on your TV and said, absolutely not. We have to talk about this Mike Tannenbaum thing because he said something that is so unbelievably stupid. It made me almost have a seizure, okay? Mike Tannenbaum doesn't think the Eagles are going to win the NFC. Mike Tannenbaum doesn't think the Eagles are going to lose in the NFC Championship game. No. Mike Tannenbaum doesn't even think the Eagles are a top 3 team in the NFC. That's just the reigning Super Bowl champions. While we're getting upset about, Jalen Hurts is number 19 on the NFL Top 100, he's fallen 4 spots despite the fact that he was a Super Bowl MVP. The voting happened in November or December. How are people? Okay, fine. Tannenbaum, he's saying this shit in the present day, knowing that the Eagles won a Super Bowl. You need to hear it.
So how many teams are you taking over Washington in the NFC?
The Packers and the Bucks, barely. Now, look.
Who does he take over the Commanders? The Packers and the Buccaneers, barely. What about the Philadelphia Eagles? No. Philadelphia Eagles? No. Well, not the Eagles. Okay. How about the Detroit Lions? We think the Detroit Lions are a good team. Mike Tannenbaum thinking, maybe not so much. Okay. I've seen some people say because of strength of schedule, the 49ers could even be a contender in the NFC. He doesn't have them. Okay. Packers and just barely the Bucks are ahead of the Commanders, maybe, in the NFC, but definitely not the reigning Super Bowl champion Eagles. All right, go ahead, Tannenbaum.
As it relates to Green Bay.
No Eagles and Lions. You mean that's it?
That's it.
You the Packers and the Tampa Bay Buccaneers.
Yeah.
No Philadelphia?
No. You just.
Speechless. Stephen A. Smith even tried, right? He even laid out there for him. Philadelphia? Maybe Mike Tannenbaum, maybe you just forgot. Or maybe you're the Eagles are so much better that they're not even in the conversation. Obviously they are a favorite, if not the favorite in the NFC. And so you're talking about the teams below the Eagles, maybe. No. Tannenbaum, not even oh shit, yeah, you're right, I forgot about it. He said, no. Okay.
Jalen Daniels is probably the best quarterback outside of Jordan Love in the NFC, and he had a whole
Jordan Love, Jaden Daniels. That's his quarterback rankings, which means no Stafford, no Goff, no Hurts. Interesting.
Season with Cliff Kingsbury. You add Deebo Samuel with the
That look, by the way, from Stephen A. Smith is oh no. You got Stephen A. Smith buffering.
You add Deebo Samuel with the aforementioned Terry McLaurin. This is an offense that was already in the top 5.
They lost 55-23 in the NFC Championship game.
Don't let facts get in the way, Stephen A. 55-23 in the NFC Championship. Tannenbaum forgets about that, I guess.
Where the Eagles go?
Where they went, that was ancient history. Look at all the defensive players.
Super Bowl 59 happened about 6 months ago, almost 7 months ago. Ancient history. Okay. Ancient history. Jaden Daniels didn't play into February. So if we're touting Jaden Daniels' skills and Jordan Love's skills, who also didn't play into February, didn't play in the Super Bowl. But the Super Bowl is ancient history. What does that make the other players? Okay, I'm just trying to follow the logic here. I don't think there is any, but I'm just trying to follow it. Okay.
Players that Philadelphia has lost, they're going to have at least 4 or 5 new stars. And when we get to a week from Thursday night and you have to put a Dory Jackson out for Darius Slay,
fair.
And you also lose C.J. Gardner.
You talking about the Philadelphia
Those are both kind of fair.
Eagles defense. I'm talking about Washington's defense. They give up 55 points.
Right. So they added Javon Kinlaw, Von Miller, who doesn't have a lot left, but maybe.
Von Miller might be a lovely guy. Was a great player for a long time. Okay, we're propping up Von Miller. It's like Weekend at Bernie's kind of Von Miller. Okay.
They'll get 15 snaps a game, and they also drafted Trey Amos. So to me, their defense will be at least middle of the road.
I don't know if you guys can see this, by the way. Schefter, look at Schefter's face down here in the bottom right corner of the screen. Schefter is kind of like, do you hear this shit? He's looking at Stephen A. do you hear this shit? And also oh, I'm excited now because Stephen A. is going to load up. Okay.
At least middle of the road. They're going to be a top 5 offense. So I think they're going to beat Philadelphia and win the division.
So middle of the road.
Oh, so it's not even, wow. This isn't even a Washington is going to beat the Eagles somewhere in the playoffs. He says they're going to beat the Eagles and win the division. Oh, Tannenbaum, why are your thoughts so stupid? Oh, Tannenbaum, this is why you're not employed by the NFL in a front office capacity. I can't believe what I just heard. I don't want to hear another word. Oh, Tannenbaum, please get the hell off my screen. Scene. There's actually more, but I can't go any further. National media pundit, former front office executive, says the Super Bowl that happened in February is ancient history. Okay. Lovely. Lovely. Now, I did say that was the negative. There was a little bit of positive. We'll go there in a second. I see some people kind of going in right now on all kinds of stuff, but okay. Last thing that I want to get to is Jason Mcintyre, who's guest hosting for Colin Cowherd over on FS1. And it's just a very, very quick thing because the idea of where Hurts ended up here at like number 19 on the list of the NFL Top 100. Mcintyre, another national media pundit, if you want to say showed a little bit more respect or maybe was cognizant of the fact that the Eagles won a Super Bowl, he threw out something that was kind of interesting. He called Jalen Hurts the best dual threat quarterback the league has ever seen. Pretty wild claim. We're not to Mcintyre here really quick.
That he's 38 on this list, it annoyed me a little bit. And then you go into Eagles message boards. I spent like 8 minutes that I cannot have back on Eagles message boards.
Where are their Eagles message boards? I do need to know that. Are message boards still a thing? And if so, where are they? How do we find them? Do we need like Windows 98 to load it up? Does anybody have an old Packard Bell they can get going? Can we play Jezball? Do you guys remember Jezball? What a great game. If you had a Windows 98 Packard Bell, there was the game Jezball, where there'd be like the red and white ball that would bounce around. Hold on, we're going to take Mcintyre off the screen. We have to talk about Jezball. So Jezball was the game. Red and white ball kind of bounces around the screen, and then you can shoot a blue line that you can either go vertical or you right click to make it go horizontal. And the whole point was like you tried to close off as much of the screen as you could and get the ball just kind of like in this tiny little area, and then you advance. And sometimes you could get it down to like a single pixel to get the ball in that one pixel. It was a great game. Everybody had to love that, right? Okay, JH says, bro hung out on the Eagles Reddit for reasonable takes. I guess technically Reddit is like a message board, isn't it? Does Green Legion have message boards? Connor Allen? I don't know. I don't really follow Green Legion. No offense to them. I'm sure they do a lovely show. All right, we're going to go back out to Mcintyre here real quick, who apparently is either on Reddit or message boards. Or both.
They're really angry about this. But the disrespect of Hurts, I think I have an answer as to why. But I'm looking at this list, and I see some guys that are on there, okay. You know, Derek Stingley, and we're going to bring him up twice. It's not a knock. He's a really good cornerback. Better than Jalen Hurts at quarterback?
No.
I mean, folks, Hurts has been in now 2 Super Bowls already.
Outplay Patrick Mahomes in both.
He's, I think, the best dual threat quarterback the league has ever seen. And if you want to go Lamar Jackson, I'm not going to fight you. Okay, I get it. Lamar's got an MVP. But Jalen Hurts has the single most unstoppable move in professional football.
Tush push. Okay. I want to be fair here. When we get a very stupid negative point made, like Mike Tannenbaum, about the Eagles being like not even one of the top 3 teams in the NFC, which is ridiculous and nonsensical. We also have to look at like when a positive thing is said and then kind of put it into context. Best dual threat quarterback of all time. And then he says, all right, maybe you put Lamar Jackson in there. He's got an MVP. Hurts has a Super Bowl MVP. How do we stack those two things up against each other, right? Like you look at a single game performance, Super Bowl, happens to be the most important game. Is a Super Bowl MVP more impressive or more important than a league MVP? You guys let me know in the comments. I don't know how to feel about it. I would say that I would rather, if I were a player, I'd rather have the Super Bowl MVP because it means my team won the Super Bowl and I was a significant part of that, more so than I won league MVP, but we didn't advance to the championship game or we didn't advance to the Super Bowl. I think I'd rather have the Super Bowl MVP. Do I think it's fair to say Hurts is the best dual threat quarterback of all time? No, he doesn't have enough years in to be the best dual threat quarterback of all time. Could he make his way into the top 10, top 5 in terms of dual threat quarterbacks? I think so. Right? But like Mike Vick for longevity, probably still ahead of Jalen Hurts. does not have a Super Bowl MVP. Lamar Jackson, if you want to look at it as a contemporary, you say league MVP, has done it for a little bit longer, is a guy that is maybe more heavily relied on, or has historically been, maybe before Derrick Henry got added to the Ravens, has been more relied on to be a dual threat guy, to lead the Ravens in what I would consider a tougher conference on the whole throughout his career than the NFC has been for Jalen Hurts. I don't know. Is that your top 3 all time? You guys can let me know in the comments. But I wanted to make sure that we talked about that one quick because I thought, hey, nice moment, nice comment about young Jalen Hurts, but I'm not exactly sure that he's the best dual threat quarterback of all time. But you guys can let me know. Shoot it to me straight in the comments section below. I think that's a good point for us to jump off for today. We had a Wednesday with. We had our first edition of Wednesdays with at Anthony SanFilippo on live from Citi Field. We'll see if the Phillies can somehow stop the bleeding tonight, maybe pick up the series finale, not get swept by the Mets. It would be delightful if they were able to avoid the sweep tonight, but we'll see if it happens. And if it doesn't, and the Phillies walk out of New York with a mere 4-game lead with 29 games to play, this might be a conversation that we're going to have on Friday, and I assume that people will be very upset. But we shall see. A win tonight doesn't take all of the sting out of things. A win tonight doesn't take the sting out of losing these first 2 games in the way that you lost these first 2 games. But we'll see. When we reconvene on Friday, we'll have a better idea of where the Phillies are. And hopefully they'll be able to get one up here on the Mets and a horrible streak of losses at Citi Field. I'm not holding my breath. Plus, I'm asthmatic. I can't really hold my breath for that long anyway. If you haven't done so already, like the video, share the video, subscribe over on YouTube, ring the bell to get notified whenever the show goes live. You can, of course, also find the show live every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday on X and on Facebook. You can also listen to the show after the fact on your favorite podcast app, which, of course, could include Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Pandora, Amazon Music, wherever you get your podcasts. If you're on Spotify, go to the show page, leave a 5-star rating. That would be greatly appreciated. If you're on Apple Podcasts, a 5-star rating is wonderful. A 5-star review is even better. I'll read it on the show. If you see the short form content going across YouTube Shorts, TikTok, Instagram, Facebook, do me a favor, hit a like there as well. It makes video guy Amadeo feel, warm and fuzzy, and it also kind of makes him feel validated in this life. So think of video guy Amadeo when you hit that little like button on pieces of content, all right? Until Friday, this has been the Russ Joy Show, and I've been Russ Joy, but you knew that already because you're smart, and it's also the name of the show. Talk to all of you Friday here on the Russ Joy Show.